Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone. With me tonight, we have a very special guest. He's a forensic artist. His name is Joe Mullins. He's a professor at, he has a couple of colleges. I had to make notes because he teaches everywhere. He's all over the place, but he's an adjunct professor at George Mason University. He's an adjunct at the New York Academy of Art, and he's an adjunct at the Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure. Been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's been a while since we spoke. And just for those of you that don't know, Joe helped me out with the cold case handbook. We were talking about unidentified human. Oh, there it is. Yep, unidentified human remains. And I reached out to Joe, and he was nice enough to give me some information that I included in the book. Nice interview, and it was all because I saw him on television talking about his cases, and I said, "Wow, this is something that really needs to get done." And one of the things that we discussed, Joe, if you remember, was the problem of getting access to the skulls, right, in order to recreate the faces. Are you still having that issue?
It's there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to pull off the classes, like when you saw me on doing the interview there at the New York Academy of Art, where I turn artists loose on actual cases with, working with the ME's offices, getting the 3D print and working with those skulls. But that's everything that's going on behind the scenes is really the huge hurdles, daunting task to come up with is getting access to the skulls. So contacting the ME's office, then facilitating, asking, say, the New York City Medical Examiner's office, say, how many skulls do you have? Well, we have 12 skulls. So now we got to get them somehow scanned and either bring in a portable scanner to scan the skulls or contact the hospital. Then they have to do the CT scan, convert this file. So there's a laundry list of things that need to come together to pull these classes off. But at the end of the day, it's been very well received because we were really doing a service for the medical examiners. We're doing something with these skulls. These are the coldest of the cold cases that have been sitting there for sometimes decades. Now, very, very important to remember this. That's not any type of slight or insult to the medical examiners. That's just the way it works. So there's cases that have just been sitting there. They're not a priority. The active homicide investigation will take a priority over a 20-year-old skull that's sitting on a shelf. But so far, so good. I mean, it's slow and steady getting access to the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. Pima County, Arizona has been supportive. And just lately with District 21 there in Fort Myers, Florida, getting access to skulls for the class there at the Ringling College. So hopefully word will spread that this is, and doors will open for us to get access to these skulls, because there's 2,040 MEs and coroner's offices just in the United States. That's a lot of skulls that are sitting there. So hopefully I'll get it. My dream is I want them all and I'll do something with them.
Right. No, it's a great service that you provide, and the students get a chance to learn how to do this, and you're setting out, for the future. And law enforcement has to understand too that this is going to help them because of the fact that right, you're helping them out big time, trying to get the name. Now you put a face on it. It helps out dramatically. So let's just go back quickly. What's like the history behind the clay composites? Like, how long has this been going on for?
Oh, wow. It's forensic art has been around for a long, long time. It started off with everybody really associates, when I say a forensic artist, it takes some time to explain what it is that I do, but it has a lot of components. And initially, forensic art was started off with doing composite sketches, like the cognitive interview, sitting down, somebody, dating back, somebody pushed me down and stole my wallets, and work with somebody to come, okay, describe what this person looked like, and extract that information and turn it into an image, and hopefully get that person, it was all about the sparking that recognition. Somebody sees that's the drawing that the artist created, and then catch the bad guy. So I guess that's really where forensic art started. Then, sculpture, it dates back thousands of years with and then rolling that into finding skeletal remains, and then what did this person look like? And it's the anatomists, I think, were the first ones to take a crack at putting skulls or faces back on skulls. So it's just evolved since then. And now, fast forward to today, it's a tool that's law enforcement relies on to help ID these coldest of the colds cases. So it's just fun for me to see how far the technology is going. Make sure we hold it back and apply it in the right way. But we've come a long way since the early days of forensic art, and technology is a wonderful thing, but used wisely.
So what's actually the process? So say you get the skull, you make a 3D rendering of it, right? I guess you use one of the new 3D printers.
Yep.
And and then could you explain to the audience what the process is, and specifically like somebody like me who has zero art capability? I mean, stick figures is about as far as I can go, drawing a stick figure. So I mean, to actually do a clay recreation of somebody's face, and some of them have been like unbelievably accurate when they finally identify the person.
It's all about creating an image that sparks recognition. And I've been doing this for 25 years. Started with the National Center for Missing Exploited Children. As we do these, I could come up with a portrait of what this person looked like in life. It's never going to work unless the right person sees it. So these artists that are creating these busts, they're following what the skull is telling them. The skull is the foundation that your face is built on, my face is built on, everybody's face is built on. And the information we're able to extract from that skull tell you detail about the soft tissue, about your eyebrows, the projection of your nose, the thickness of your lips, placement of your ears, where you have attached or detached earlobes, like everything about your face, the nuances is etched into your skull. So building off that foundation, the students, it's just a process of reading the skull accurately and portraying that information and translated it into a soft tissue, coming with that we call the facial approximation. And if we get it right, they work. So all if the right person sees it. But it's like doing a portrait from the inside out. That's an easy way to.
I've seen some of the stages that you do, right? So what are those things that they put on the skull to help them mold it?
Yeah, so we have tissue depth markers. Now, there's studies that were done to tell you averages on landmarks on the skull to tell you how far to build the face out. And it's based on your age and your ancestry and your male or female. So those are studies that have been done. So it looks like little spikes sticking out. So it starts off with the bear skull. We sculpt the muscles on there because everybody's underneath the skin. We're all the same. The facial muscles, attaching to the skull. It's making us all our expression. So it's that anatomical approach. So skull, muscles, tissue depth markers, set the eyes and the orbits, and then just building up the face one feature at a time. Now we know how much tissue to put on those parts on the skull where that point is sticking out. And that tells us averages for round to make the cheeks, tissue up here on your forehead. So the process is it's not see, the way I explain it to my students is the way forensic anthropology works is it's majority rules. So they've studied 1,000 skulls and there's 765 looking at these skulls. These are predictable features that are going to come out. Now everybody's going to fall off the scales. Like those people that fall off the scale, those unique faces that you see when you're walking down the street. You'll take like a double take and see somebody with a big ears or a big nose or a short that very, very unique faces. And those kind of details will get lost. But just going back, we have to follow. We have to follow what the skull is telling us. We can't go off the rails. Always we have a very limited artistic license. So, and hopefully we come up with a good image that's almost as good enough, and it sparks that recognition, and a person is identified.
Is there any particular place that you start with when you're doing this, or is it up to the artist?
No. So if I'm orchestrating the class, we start with the bear skull. We sculpt the muscles on first, then apply the tissue depth markers, set the eyes in the orbits. And I like to start from the top down because everybody uniform, tissue depth around, on top of your head, and everything, all the variation comes, down here around your face. So we start up here and just work our way down, through the, put your eyelids, come down to the nose, swing around, sculpt the ears, fill in the cheeks, and then do the lips and the chin and formulate a neck. And then any information we have on, if we have information on clothing or hair, then we can sculpt that back on as well. So it's really it is that portrait, a detailed portrait from from the inside out.
Right. And, with the help of like the forensic anthropologist, I guess they're giving you an idea too about the individual's race, right? And you said, I know they can tell you the gender and stuff like that. Other issues, that you deal with in regards to the different races that you have to help, like, rebuild the faces. I mean, does that come into problems?
So, yeah, a forensic anthropologist is the one who, we always say it's a combination of art and science. The science provided in this realm is provided by the forensic anthropologists, and they're the ones who assess the skull and give us the parameters for, okay, pick up a skull and say this is a Black Hispanic female, late teens, early 20s, had an overbite, got a deviated septum, and some, like, the nose looked like there was a fracture there, so it'd be twisted to the left, and amazing details. Yeah. So as far as we deal with like ancestry and race. Came up with an analogy for like jelly beans. You have a bag of jelly beans. So the bag of jelly beans, the color, it represents the race. The flavor of the jelly beans represents the ethnicity, and ancestry is the factory where the jelly beans were made. So there's three distinct different characteristics. So when we start off on day one, we're dealing with ancestry, the facts, like what the forensic anthropologist gives us. But that example, so we have a Black Hispanic female, as we're finishing up that face, now when somebody walks into the classroom and asks, what are you guys looking at? And they look at that student's work and they say, oh, it looks like a Caucasian male. Well, they've done something. Something wrong. So we have to hit race. Comes into it when we're doing the finishing touches. We have to hit the parameters given to us by the forensic anthropologist. So it has to look like a Black Hispanic female. Does that make sense? So we
Yep.
go from ancestry to race. But it has to be in that ballpark with that assessment that we were given.
I don't know if you saw the other day on the news, I think it was Wyoming, there was a big issue with the indigenous females, specifically. A lot of missing cases, a lot of murders that have been unreported all these years. And I'm part of the Murder Accountability Project too, that there's been lawsuits filed against the government to try to get these acts. Have you been, because I heard you said you were out in Arizona. Are there any works going on with indigenous peoples of the United States?
Yeah, so one of the big hurdles is cooperation. We talked about getting access to these skulls. So the indigenous, I would love to get access and help with all these cases. So with Pima County, we did an entire class of these were the entire class was victims that died trying to cross the border. So there's another issue. Even when we do finish these and release these images, there's a lot of media attention but that's all broadcast here in the US. Like we need to go, we're talking to the wrong audience. We need to get them these broadcasts, all globally, because there's likelihood they're not from the US.
Right.
But that's the indigenous folks, like as far as my ancestry, I have my mother was born on the Navajo reservation in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I would love to, offer this type of service because it's a sad reality. It doesn't matter what indigenous, whatever population you belong to, the odds are there's unidentified, skeletal remains that are in need of this type of, service. So.
Yeah. I didn't even know that you were half American Indian. That's pretty amazing. And the other thing is, I just think there's going to be a flood of these cases moving forward, because the FBI is involved in this now. They're releasing information, and I think it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of potential there. And then this is where also maybe you can, use your talents, like Southern Charm wrote. He says, "What a way to utilize your talent," right? So I mean,
my mom said, it's art with a purpose.
there you go.
I was like, there you go, Mom. That's perfect. I think
Smart lady.
Yes, absolutely.
So, what are besides getting access to these skulls? What are some of the other obstacles that you're dealing with in law enforcement? And like, how do we overcome these things so to make your job easier and get this like replicated everywhere?
I've worked directly with law enforcement there at my day job, whether at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. No real, no frustrations really. It's like, for me, it's just spreading the word that this is a service that we could provide. And there at the National Center, just to be clear, if it's skeletal remains, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children being the key word, we can't help assist with skulls that are assessed as over 21. So if it's an adult case, that falls under that's why I'm so busy doing these classes, around all these different places, because those are the adult cases that the National Center cannot assist with. So the frustrations would be just education and, letting everybody spread the word that this is something we can help with. And even if it's an adult case, if a call comes in, it's like, if I can't help you with my day job, I'll find somebody who can, or I'll facilitate it through my, classes that I teach. So no real frustrations. I think it's just spreading the words and letting us have access to it. I don't want to ruffle any feathers or sound accusatory when I knock on the door at Amy's office and say, "Hey, you have 32 skulls," and everybody throw your hands up. Whoa! We don't have 32 skulls. That's not why I'm here. It's like, I'm not here to.
Gotcha.
I'm here to provide a service for law enforcement. I need law enforcement. I'm here to help in whatever way I can. So,
do you see when you get some media attention, right? Because I know you've done a number of media spots. After those media spots come out, do you get more inquiries from medical examiners and coroners and law enforcement? Is it work that way?
It is great. That's a lot of times. I think the LinkedIn. Amanda from the District 21 Medical Exams Office, she reached out because she saw, just like you saw, some media interview that I had posted and reached out. So that's the best way. And the reality is, I need the media. I'm constantly trying to, in addition to trying to find the skulls, get them scanned and printed. We need to contact the media to get attention. And I always tell them, it's like, don't show up on day one. You need to come on at the end of the week on Friday and see the finished faces, and let the faces be the story and help get them identified. So it's a constant, lots of balls in the air to pull us off of the media. We need the media because it doesn't work unless the right person sees it. So we need as many eyes on these cases as possible to spread the word, share it on social media, blast it out. So I've gotten lots of follow-up responses from the media attention, mostly positive.
Well, listen, you're always going to have your detractors too, right? And there's always going to be something, right? I mean, if you're in this line of work, even when you're trying to help and you're doing all this stuff, there's still people that will, they're just never happy, right? So you just tend to ignore them. But
not my intent to upset you, but get out of my way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? That's usually the way it goes. But yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, that's in this line of work. No matter what, even when you're trying to do good, people will still have to throw their 2 cents in. I mean, it is what it is with that. So, how long does the process take? So, you have a student, and I'm assuming the student has some background already or some skills. They're already in the art program for a while, and they're talented in that respect. Do you choose? Does everyone get in this program? They want to do this, or is there a process that they got to get through?
So ideally, I like to open up to the masses, and bring it in. I'll teach whoever wants to.
Anybody
that wants to learn this. However, I wish I was a master chef. I can't, but I'm sure with practice I would get there. But but I found that, fine artists, that's why, they're at the New York Academy of Art, the Ringling College of Art and Design, those all hidden up, Savannah College of Art and Design, RISD, the Rhode Island School of Art. It's like those are the places where the artists are. And I want to pick an apple off the tree mentality and give me a sculpting student, like a figure sculpting student. That's the perfect fit to be a forensic artist and doing the facial approximation, because they're really already on a path of becoming a forensic artist. It's just a slight nudge down a different path. And it's like I always say, it's like a superpower that's been dormant. They didn't know they could do it. So I want the fine artist, because it's a very easy way to manipulate them and teach them how to use that power that they have.
And that's what makes you an effective teacher, right? I mean, so here you're finding out that, not every artist is going to have that same set of skill, or they want to. I mean, just like in forensic pathologists, right? There's lots of doctors out there, but they don't want to be a forensic pathologist. Go back to school for more and take another challenge and do, it's another challenge. So people like, oh God, I just wanted to make statues of David. Now I'm doing this, right?
Right. But they can still do the statues of David and then offer this service on the side. So that's the part for me, is inspiring these students that they want to, and they reach out, they want to do this. So I feel like I've done something right, that I've inspired somebody to be a forensic artist. I feel like.
And then hopefully they go out and do the same thing you do, right? And replicate this. And I guess that's your overall plan, right?
Yes, so I just want to share. I'll teach whoever wants to do it. See, there's thousands of skulls out there. If you do it right and make a difference.
Yep, and all you're asking for is that student who wants to learn how to do it. Like I guess I know you said you could teach anybody, but I can tell you right now, you'd be wasting your time with me. So, not for the sake of not trying. I just would never be able to pull it off.
Talent accepted. That'll be for next show.
Yeah, talent. You need to have some talent on this. That's for sure. So let's just say, for instance, you have a situation where law enforcement contacts you. They had a composite done, 15, 20 years ago. Right? How do you approach that, and how does that go? Because I'm sure there's some issues with other artists too, right? Let's say, I did this, years ago. Why are we doing it now, right? I'm sure there's some, that's even in cold cases. The investigators, well, why are you looking at it? You think I did something wrong, and everything else. So tell us about that process.
That it happens more often than not, and really, you have to be thick-skinned in this job. It's like, I look at it this way: if somebody redoes something that I did, that's because it didn't work. So, and if whatever they did, and go and do it again, if it's successful and gets that child back, reunited with an age progression, or the victim identified, why would I be upset? So I say, your egos and attitudes don't need to be ruffled in this realm, but they do sometimes. But we really get involved in redos, that's what we call them, really on older cases. But these are cases that were done in the 90s and 80s with the sometimes not so great looking facial approximation, and sometimes we could reach out to the medical examiner and they'll still have the skull there, and we can facilitate fast forward to the modern method of doing these facial approximations, get a CT scan and a 3D printer, do it, digitally or clay, whatever the needs may be. So we're going to step on some toes here and there, but I say we're all on the same team to get these people identified, or these fugitives caught and children reunited with their families. So we're all on the same team. So I try not to ruffle any feathers. What I would do, it's not.
I mean, sometimes you got to ruffle them. It is what it is. So I'm sure the big difference though is, like you said. So you're talking 1990s. I know for people our age, Joe, we say 1990s. I don't think it was that long ago, but yeah, it was 30 years ago. So, But we didn't have 3D printers. We didn't have portable scanners. How did they do it back then?
So back then it was all hand sketches. Now there's doing from the skull. Sometimes they would just take a photograph of the skull and call a 2D facial approximation, was just it's just a 2D sketch. So you'll have lots of those. And then Clay was still around, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Clay's been around for a long time. So that was a lot of times that was. And fun facts, you remember that show, That's Incredible? I remember watching.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
And Betty Pat Gatliff was on that show doing a facial approximation on that show. I vividly remember watching that show. And fast forward years later, guess who was one of the instructors when I went through the FBI Academy? Betty Pat Gatliff. So
nice.
It's funny how that's works. So Clay was what they used back then, and
I'm sure she didn't want to hear, hey, listen, I saw you on That's Incredible. I'm sure she didn't want to hear it. I'm sure I've actually done that before. I said, one of the reporters I did an interview with, and I was, didn't mean it to be, I said, oh, I grew up watching you. And she looked at me, with the great beard. And I was like, you grew up with me? Oh, boy, one of those, yikes.
But I don't think I shared that memory with her. She was like a feisty, mom, the way she taught her classes. I don't. She was one of my mentors. I wouldn't be talking to you if what she hadn't taught me. So rest in peace, Betty Patton. Thank you.
But you know what, though? Not for nothing. Like, so the way you explained it in the way the new process is where you actually can now take a scanner and make a skull. I mean, yeah. So if you go back on these old cases, really, the artist shouldn't be upset because the technology has changed so much.
Absolutely. I mean, we can't. And so all we can do is try not to, have malicious intent and go through and try to, upset people. But like I said, we're all on the same team. There's times when we've gone back and redone an image or a facial approximation, and they've been identified. So it's a win for everybody. So it's I've had a few my share of redos with mine, and they've been successful. So I would say great. I learned better from my mistakes.
Well, even that though, maybe somebody else improved on something, or somebody had, everybody's got a different level of talent. So, I mean, I would look at that as like whoever started it. Like, listen, you helped identify this person because you put it out there.
Yeah, we're all on this. I just took what they had and modified it, and the right person saw it. That's just whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, and today is it's a social media world because it depends on the age group, right? So I guess when you're doing the media or the social media aspect of this, is you kind of have to target that cohort that you're looking for because they're the ones that are going to know the 20-year-old, not the 60-year-olds.
Right. Yeah. So the social media it's got to be thousands of cases resolved just by posting them to Help ID Me on Facebook. It's a group the National Center has. It just got one resolved a few weeks ago. The kid had been missing, unidentified for a couple of years, and as soon as somebody saw the post, I know who that is. So the social media has been an amazing tool to help get these images out there. Because again, go back to the comment. They don't work unless the right person sees it.
Could you repeat that site again? Because maybe one of the moderators can actually find it and put it in the chat for everybody.
It's a Facebook group for the National Center. It's called Help ID Me.
There it is. Actually, Raul's already on top of it. There it is. Help ID Me. Thanks, Raul.
So it's a wonderful resource. The cases are featured there with all the details. The face, of course, that's the key to spark that recognition sometimes. But even sometimes the Help ID Me can feature the artifacts that are found with the remains. Sometimes the face can kind of raise an eyebrow and say, hey, that kind of looks like my uncle, but holy cow, that was his watch. So you'll be able to see the full scope. And sometimes it's not the face is someone that gets the attention, but the other facts of the case can really drive that person to pick up the phone and make that call.
It's an active case, so I'm just going to ask a question. If you can't answer it, that's fine. But like the Long Island serial killer, we have a couple of people out there who are still unidentified, right? We have the Asian male is still unidentified. We have Peaches. We have a couple of people, and we have Baby Doe who belongs to Peaches. Have you been asked to help out and try to do a rendering on those?
Not yet, but the last I checked of the NYPD, I know there's very talented artists out there in New York, New Jersey, around the area that would be able to support those types of requests. So I'm always here to to help. If they reach out to me, I will gladly assist in whatever way they need me.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, because it's just an interesting case that
Oh
it's
yeah,
technically right in your backyard, and it's right in your wheelhouse too.
yeah,
I
yeah.
figured, they could try to throw something at it. I mean, something different, right? Because it seems to be like stalled in so many things. But there's so many cases out there that are just like that,
Yeah.
where you, you, you just hope that they would reach out to but maybe they don't. Maybe they don't know you're out there.
Yeah, that's what we were talking before the show started. It's just fascinating to me that everybody doesn't know. Like, this is we're a free resource for law enforcement there at the National Center for Missing Exploited Children. We're the sister cases, and it's just mind-boggling to me with the the way the world works and instant information that's people don't know what we were able to accomplish. We're a resource. We're here to help. Let me help you. Help me help you.
And it was one of the things. Well, you helped me with the book, right? So you helped
Yeah,
me, put this in there, and like, for instance, like somebody in the chat just put out about the Asian male, right? We have no idea who this individual is. We do know that the suspect that they have arrested, the alleged killer of 4 women, had made searches, in regards to an Asian male, and some other issues. So you would hope, because we need to identify him. That's goal number one, right? So that's what your goal is, to help police identify this person, so they could, like you said, reunite them or try to find out who's responsible for their death.
right. You gotta figure out who the victim is, then find out who did it.
Right. Yeah, but have to, if you don't know who it is, you don't know who their enemies were, or you don't know what they were up to, or who their friends were. Or,
It's a big piece to the puzzle.
It's a huge piece, right? So I mean, this is like something where uh, we need to try to figure out how to get this spread far and wide, and
Yeah.
to be able to get that out there. So
Yes.
we
Yes.
need. Yeah, we need you to take over the rest of the colleges out there, Joe. You only teach at 3 schools, so we got only 3. You're slacking.
Wrap it up. I am. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. We'll have this. Maybe this will help spread the word. And if if you're Emmy's office or a fine arts school, please get in touch. We need to talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, one thing about doing, like I said, doing interviews. I know you were on a friend of mine, Cheryl Max. Her zone.
Yeah, you see my cat back here behind me.
There it is, Cheryl Mack. Now, are those Clay? Are those real ones that you've done, or are those just like props, so to speak?
There's a Mongolian monk back here I did for the Smithsonian Museum. This is just a model for the class, and this 3D print with Mac's hat on it is a case we resolved there at the National Center.
Can you show the skull a little bit so that the audience can actually see that? That's actually pretty neat.
Sure. So there's a Mongolian monk that was found in the 1930s it was executed in 1930s by Stalin. And this guy was off in a grave by himself. There was a mass grave with a bunch of monks in it, and this guy. So my good friend and mentor, Dr. David Hunt, was on the dig, and they were curious why this guy was out by himself and not in the mass grave. And it's a lot of conversation. And he said, "Well, so I know somebody that can put a face back on this for you." So that's just, so I say, knowing the right person. So I ended up doing a facial approximation for some Mongolian monk who was executed back, many years ago. And the funny thing with this, when I finished it, I took photographs of the finished bust and sent it to Dr. Hunt, because he was in contact with the folks in Mongolia. And I realized, and he called me. He said, "Well, I just got off the phone with them. They're upset. There's something wrong with your facial approximation." So I was devastated. I was like, I was looking at it. It's like, what did I do? how did I? So what had happened? Well, the monks have a very specific way of dressing. So I put the top fold. So this was on top originally, and they immediately saw that. They're like, no, that's wrong. So I insulted them because I put the monk's robe on the wrong way. Aside from that, they said they loved it. It's like, oh my gosh, it looks. They put it in the museum, and they were very happy. But that's lesson learned.
Well, yeah. I mean, how would you know, right? So, I mean, I don't know too many people who are experts on Mongolian monks that are working out of Manhattan.
Right, I am now. I know how they dress. The
yeah, and we all do now.
Fold goes on the left top.
So. That is a funny story. But so, what's the difference between doing like the clay composite drawing and the digital renditions now? Because everything is CAD drawings and everything like that. What's the benefit of using clay and being able to do this?
So I guess clay is beneficial because clay is cheap, and it's a tried and true method that's been around for a long time. The digital aspect of it, it has a very steep learning curve to do that, and there's only a handful of forensic artists, in the United States or even globally that do all this stuff, and there's even a smaller handful that does it both with clay and the digital stuff. But the digital is advantageous because we don't have to find a printer, and we don't have to work with the clay. So it's imported into the the software, and it's exact same process as if we were doing it in clay. The clay the skull is floating around in this virtual space. We apply the muscles, the tissue depth markers, set eyes in the orbits, and sculpt the face in that virtual environment, and then output the image and help and release the images and help spark that recognition. And then with the sculpture, I guess one is a time difference. Of course, if I'm working digitally, I don't have to sculpt one ear and copy and paste it and flip it to the other side, and it's faster, and I can actually the digital clay that I'm working on, I can make it translucent so I can see, the structure of the skull behind it. So it's fascinating software that we use, but I guess the fine artist in me always wants to get to a point and just rip it out of that, space and get my favorite sculpting tool and get in there and get my hands on it and get, clay under my fingernails. That's that type of thing. But I tested I see the advantages of both digital and clay. And clay, we can see the difference. See if we can. So we say this, that this is a cast of the clay, the clay reconstruction. And this is a 3D print from the digital. So I always say it looks more like a mannequin from the computer aspect of it, as opposed to you show this one to somebody, everybody's going to know what they're looking at.
Yeah, it looks more lifelike.
Yeah. But the reality is this one was successful. 2 people saw this facial approximation and they knew exactly who it was. So they do work.
Now, so the 3D printer, does it make it into is it like the plastic kind of stuff, the mold, the skull?
So the 3D printers, there's lots of different printers out there. There's some that print with like a plaster. It looks more like just like a stone type of print. It's like plaster with super glue, and it lays down the layers and stacks them up, and you get a 3-dimensional model. And the plastic ones, there's resin ones, plastic ones. It depends on how much money you spent on your printer, so how detailed your print is going to be. So we found
like everything else. Right?
Right.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah. So I found that the middle of the roads printer that prints, it's a PolyJet printer, because it's like white plastic. That works great. It's strong enough. It's supportive enough for the clay. It works great. So low maintenance. I don't need the Cadillac. I'll take the Ford.
What is some of the how many students in a class that when you do this?
Typically, I max the class out at 15. That's about. So I've timed it. If I demo something, it takes me that long to go around the circle and get to 15 different students to show them how to, hands-on, how to do it. And any more than that, I probably need to, recruit another artist to help assist. But still, and I do it's 16 total. So as I'm doing the class, I try to find 16 active cases, wherever the class is held. So that's 16 active investigations that we're assisting with.
Yeah, that was my next question. So does each student get their own case to work on, or they all work on the same one?
Nope. We want to get the most out of the experience, and everybody gets an active case.
Right. So basically you could do, 100 cases a year, right? It depends on how many courses you're going to run.
Absolutely. So, and the big dream is to keep doing these classes, get access to these skulls with the help of the show, access to the skulls, scan and print these and do them digitally while they're doing these classes, and clear the shelves of ME's offices across the U.S., ME's and coroner's offices across the U.S. And last I checked, there's 2,040 ME's and coroner's office just in the United States. So as of today, the New York City Medical Examiner's Office with Dr. Brad Abbins, they only have one new case as a result of the collaboration that he's involved with, supplying the cases. And now District 21 in Fort Myers, Florida they're about to have none, because we'll crank all those out in a couple of weeks at the class. So slow and steady, 2 down, and was at 2,038 to go.
Yeah, you know what? You got to start somewhere. I mean, getting New York. I mean, New York is difficult to get access to anything. I can tell you that right now. But one thing I can say about Dr. Brad Adams, boy, he's top notch.
He has been nothing but a adamant, friend and supporter since we started doing this. The first class I did with the active cases was back in 2015, and we've solved a number of cases as a result of that collaboration. And he's been just an amazing supporter, and he's all in to help with whatever we need. I don't think he's ever said no to anything.
Yep. No, yeah, like I said, I worked with him a number of times. I know you probably have a number of triumphs, right? So which one do you feel, out of all the cases that you've helped identify somebody, do you feel like I guess the most proud of? Let's just call it that way.
Most proud. Oh, there's a couple. There was one that we did. It was Skamania County, Washington. I think it was deer grass pickers, some migrant workers found a skull, but they only found the cranium, just the top part, and that's it. No, nothing else. So, and I guess those guys, the migrant workers, put it on like a path, and some hunter came across and he found it and turned it into the police. So it ended up with us. Now it's a little bit of a challenge now, because I've just got the top of the skull, no mandible. And that's putting a puzzle together, and I'm a lot of pieces short. So we called in our forensic anthropologist, Dr. David Hunt. He comes in and gives me the assessment and helps me, sculpt the mandible. So I had to sculpt, and it was like a large bladed instrument was used. You could see the cut marks and bones, like cheekbones were shattered. So I had to fill in the blanks with the clay with his assistance and guidance. So I came up with just a sketch, and they, working with the police department, they said that we're going to go back up, and it was winter time there. So they were going to go back up to the scene and see if they could find something. So I just created this 2D sketch for them. So a neighboring jurisdiction, they put out a bulletin with that image on there with the details, and some investigator was walking down the hall and saw that flyer and pulled it off and recognized it as one of his missing person cases. Wow. So it was solved immediately when the flyer was put together by the neighboring jurisdiction. So that was probably well over 20 years ago, but that was one that I was excited about, just to prove the point that even missing a lot of the pieces, working with the forensic anthropologist, given that rights parameters, we hit that mark and the right person saw it, and that person is now identified. So that was one early on that I really wanted, just so that challenge of it wasn't even a 3D, it was just a 2D sketch I'd done and sculpted all the missing parts, and it worked. So that was
that's amazing.
So, and there's most recently there was a case. Her name was Gwendolyn Robinson. She was her daughter was still looking for her, her adult daughter. So she went to the police station and handed them a photograph of her. And the detective who got looking at the picture, he's like, this looks familiar. And he was remembering a facial approximation that we had done for them back in 2016. This was just like a year ago, probably less than that. So that's the person I want to really talk to, of like, what did you see what's that? He was the one that could spark that recognition. And he went back and found the picture, and he's got the two side by side. He's like, oh, wow, this is definitely her. So and it was 39 years that was a 39-year gap that we filled in. Now her daughter has, some of those answers. I think there's still an active investigation piece to that case, but that was another one because that case initially, when we got the case, even before 2016, it was a few years earlier, the ME's office only provided a photograph of the skull, and it was whoever looked at it gave us, it was like a Caucasian female and different parameters. But then years later, they found the skull. So we went through our process. We did the CT scan, the whole process, and did it digitally, and then put it out. And then that was one that was ultimately successful. But it was assessed as it was a Black female, not a Caucasian female. So yeah. Maybe the family would have had answers a few years earlier if we'd gotten good information, but not to press the issue. But as you do these, you're hitting that mark of the information given to you by that forensic anthropologist. It's got to be the right information. Otherwise, it's not going to help. You're going to put the wrong face.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're only as good as the information that you get to start with. So,
exactly.
So we got a question from Raul. It says, any composites that you feel so connected to that are still unsolved? So is there a case that is there a case that haunts you?
Yes, there's a case that haunts me. Well, it was a Terry Rasmussen, the serial killer. It was the barrel cases from, I don't remember, it was like Vermont, where the barrels, there's a mother and two daughters, and there was a third child that was found in the barrels, all blunt force trauma. So we identified the mother and the two daughters were identified, and that third child, who they got DNA testing, turns out the biological father is the serial killer who died in prison, but they still don't know who this little girl is. And that's one that really, haunts me, is probably a good word, because I just really we've got, 3 of the 4 identified, and that one, I want that little girl to get her name back. Yeah. Vividly see her face. And that was one back in the day where they would send us the skulls. So it was around the time our kids were about the same age as these skulls that I'm pulling out of these boxes with blunt force trauma to all of them with their heads, smashed in, literally. And that one, it stuck to me in that one. Yeah. That's one I really, 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 really want to get her identified. And I could go on for hours and tell you, like, close my eyes and think of all the faces and skulls and age progressions and fugitive updates that I've done. So
that's why I use the word haunt.
Yeah, motivation.
Yeah, I use the word haunt because we all have at least one case that sticks with us, and it's going to stick with you your whole life. You're never going to get over that until it's finally solved.
No.
And I tell people, investigators, even people like yourself, forensic artists, they need closure too on some of these cases.
Closure. So every time when I hear that word, I have to tell a story. John Walsh, John and Reve Walsh are the co-founders of the National Center for Missing Exploited Children. This was probably 20 years ago when America's Most Wanted, the original show. It's back on now on Fox with John and Cal. They were filming an episode, and I was being interviewed. Nervous, never been on America's Most Wanted before. Sweat rolling off my forehead, and John was great, calm me down. But as I'm going, the cameras are rolling. I get over my anxiety attack, and he comes in and here's Joe Mullins, forensic artist here at the National Center for Missing Exploited Children. Joe, show us what you do here. So I'm going through my demo and showing him the age progressions, and I get to a picture of a skull, and I said, "Would you say so?" It's not bringing home a live child, but at least we provide closure to these families. Well, John Walsh yells, "Cut!" And he leans over, kind of spins my chair around. He had a gray suit, white shirt, red tie. Now the red tie is now, he's like right here in my face. And he said words I'll never forget. He said, "Joe, I don't like that word closure." It's like people have been saying that to Reve and I for as long as I can remember. I'm never going to forget my son. There's no forgetting. There's no closure. So he kind of tilted his head. And he said, a better way to explain the process of these facial approximation, the service that we're providing is you're providing answers to families. He said, because not knowing is a nightmare you can't wake up from. So he patted me on the back, spun my chair back around and said, "Okay, let's do it again." So that was a defining moment. Yeah, it's that so those things stick with you. That was, and John Walsh and what that family endured after the loss of their son Adam. They have every right to make that. And I feel like I owe a sense of debt to that family to make sure that no family make sure that every family gets those answers.
Yep. No, that's I mean, he's the whole true crime community and everybody. I mean, this is all because of John Walsh. I mean, he was doing true crime stuff before anybody even talked about it.
Yeah.
And and it's as simple as that. So I have a lot of people in the chat are talking about like, is it open? Do you do any of these classes that are open to the public, or that they can actually watch the process, or can they join if they just to learn about this?
So depending, if you're a fine artist that wants to do this, let's say I probably should have my own personal website to advertise these classes, but there are the continuing education classes that I teach up in New York. It's really open to anybody. The first, it said maxes out at 15, and the first priority goes to, of course, the students there at the New York Academy of Art. But there's been times that other artists off the streets are able to sign up, and there is a bit of a vetting process. You have to show some portfolio and show some character work, because from my perspective, if you're new to this and you want to give it a shot, then I won't give you an active case. I'll give you a skull of a known individual that you can work on. And at the end of the class, you get to see what that person looked like. So you'll still then come back the next year. Then I'll give you an active case. So I'd still encourage everybody to take the class, and you could just a different experience.
And that's the link to the New York Academy of Art that we actually, the ones you sent me, I posted it in the show notes. So if anybody is interested and you have some talent, and you want to join Joe and impress him with your skills, I'm sure.
Bring it on.
Where is the New York Academy located in Manhattan?
It's in Tribeca. It's on I don't know whether any of cross streets. I know it's on Franklin.
So basically, it's downtown, not too far from the Village, from down there. So for those that are familiar with it, they'll know exactly where we're talking about. For those those that are watching from other places, because we actually have a worldwide audience now. They're going, "What's Tribeca?" Right? So,
New York, New York City.
So, is there plans like to do any maybe virtual kind of things where people can watch on, maybe watch on like YouTube or online? Do you do anything like that, or any plans to do that?
I'm always up to educate people that want to do this. So you said people like respond to the media outlets. I got all kinds of students come forward out of the woodworks from all across the U.S. asking for how do I do this, or is there a way to training videos. So I would be up for putting together some type of tutorial or show. I'll like I said, I'll share it with the world. Isn't it? I'm not.
You're not trying to keep it close to the vest there.
Proprietary with my information. If you want to help, I need all the help. We need all the help we can get. There's quite literally thousands and thousands of skulls out there in need of this. If you want to do it, by God, I'll teach you how to do it.
Or at least maybe there's somebody watching it, like you said before, that has access to this or knows the medical examiner or the local coroner, and you can get them in contact with Joe. His contact information is in the show notes. People have been posting it. The George Mason University, his email is attached to that page. That's his faculty page. So if you needed to get a hold of Joe.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a call to arms. I can't do it by myself. It's slow and steady. There's only like 3 schools. There's a lot of schools out there, a lot of schools, a lot of cities, a lot of ME's offices. So I'll knock on the door and let us help.
Is there a part of the country or a city that has that you know of that has the most kind of skulls and human remains that are not being addressed?
Well, it's Florida, New York, California, Texas, Arizona. There's like the border states really where lots of the
populous states too. I can see
lots of the skulls are there. So, but there's every state, all the top 5, those that I mentioned, don't have the corner of the market on unidentified remains. It's a global problem, and this initiative, if it works here, it'll work globally. And by international, I know the United States doesn't corner the market on unidentified skeletal remains. So no. I'm happy to same process works for international skulls. So
how many individuals out there like yourself that are doing this? Do you think in the United States? You have a number on that?
I'd say there's a couple hundred of us that are doing this, and it's such a small, really, community that we live in. Is if somebody's doing it that we don't know who they are, it's not likely because we encourage, if you want to do this, do it the right way. Because if you do it, you get out there and no, I can do this, and create some image that's detrimental to getting the person identified and not helpful. So if you're out there and want to do this, we will make sure you learn how to do it correctly.
So we got a question from Becky over here. Says, how many classes do you hold a year? The website says yearly. Is it?
Well, hopefully that number will grow. It's like so this year I'm doing 2. So one at the Ringling College here in a few weeks in March, and then the date should be posted later this week for the class at the New York Academy of Art in Tribeca in May. And then after this broadcast, if people hit me up, I'll just keep doing these over and over and over and over again.
We got another question here from Nitty Gritty. It says for Joe. I guess that means for you, right? Since we're both Joe. But did you work on NCMEC William Hamilton reconstruction? I don't know.
Work on Nick McWilliam doesn't. That doesn't ring a bell. We have 4 full-time forensic artists there at the National Center for Missing Exploited Children, a forensic imaging unit. So that name doesn't ring a bell with me. So it must have been one of the other very talented artists there.
So Flynn Brown, Finland, what made you realize that you could do this? What was their defining moment? I think that's a good question.
That is, well, if you believe in fate or destiny, I was going down a road. My background is in fine art and graphic design. I was going down the road of graphic artists working at this design firm in Arlington, Virginia. It was the worst job ever. I hated it. It was like doing logos and brochures. Had to type some resumes. It was grunts. It was not prestigious, design work, not very creative. So a buddy of mine left that job and went to get a job at the National Center for Missing Exploited Children, which coincidentally was like a few blocks away in Arlington. So he'd left, and I was even more miserable because now my friend left. But he called me up one day and said, "Yeah, let's grab some lunch." He's like, "Why don't you come over here to meet me?" It's like, "Where are you?" So he gave me the address, and I had no idea what. It's a mouthful. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. No idea what that was. That's what we say, NCMEC. It's like, so he gave me the address. I'm like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. So I walk over there. I get to the front desk, and I'm meet my buddy Ed for lunch. So I'm escorted back to where he sat. As I'm walking down the hall, I see some guy sitting closest to the door, and he's sitting there, and he's looking like Hamlet. He's got a skull in his hands, like a human skull. So that stopped me in my tracks. I'm kind of looking around, like, is that a real skull? It's like, why do you have what are you doing? So that was my defining moment of introduction to Steve Lofton, a forensic artist there at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. At the time, it was just Steve Lofton and Glenn Miller, who were retired, composite artists with Fairfax County Police. That's how they got that job. They were the two original NCMEC forensic artists. So I was fascinated. I was like, "That's a real skull," and just asked him a million questions. It basically ended up blowing off my friend for lunch. He had to come find me. I was still sitting there talking to Steve. I didn't care about lunch. I just thought meeting a forensic artist, like, this is what I want to do. Now, the funny coincidence with that skull that Steve was holding was the very first skull that ever landed at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It was through a breakdown in communication. An investigator from Las Vegas had called in and needed help with some images that they had created for this case. So Glenn had taken the call, and through the back and forth, Glenn said, "I can't help you unless I see what you're talking about. Just send me what you got, and we'll take a look at it." So the investigator took him at his word and threw the skull and the images in a box and shipped it. So earlier that morning, before I'm walking over there, Glenn takes the call and opens up the box and pulls the skull out, calls the investigator back. It's like, "What the hell's the matter with you? You can't send me a skull. That's horrible."
It might be against the law too.
I think that was the first thing he said. That's violated some type of HIPAA laws or violation of it. Bad. We don't do that here. I'm sorry you misunderstood what I said. I'm sure he got a tongue lashing. And the guy must have been a great negotiator, because he talked Glenn into keeping it. And so Glenn, being a good supervisor, when Steve showed up to work that day, he said, "Here, good morning, do something with this." So Steve's like, "What?" He's like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I don't even know where to start. So he goes and sits down at his desk, and there's, the planets are aligning. That was the moment that I come walking down the hall, when he's sitting there with that first skull. And that first skull also introduced me to Dr. David Hunt, or the National Center, because an intern walked in after I had left and asked Steve the same question: "Why the hell do you have a skull?" So he had to tell that story probably 1,000 times. And she picks it up and starts rattling off some details about the skull. And he's all dumbfounded. And she's like, how do you know how to do all that? And she goes, "Well, I'm taking an osteology class at George Washington University." She goes, "You look like you need some help." It's like, "I'll ask my professor tonight if he can help you." And turns out her professor was Dr. David Hunt, one of 50 board certified, forensic anthropologists in the country. He's exactly the guy to help out. So that one skull was the glue that motivated me to be a forensic artist and introduced me to Dr. David Hunt and Steve Lofton and Glenn Miller. So that was my defining moment.
that was a great story. I don't know how many people missed the Hamlet reference, but I didn't miss it. So I caught the reference there. I'm sure some other older people like ourselves, Joe, caught that reference. I don't even know if they teach Hamlet anymore in the schools.
Probably not.
Probably not. Well, listen, I mean, we're actually over an hour and 5 minutes already. I knew this was going to fly by. This was phenomenal.
You're right.
Yeah, totally this was phenomenal. But I want to thank you, Joe, spending your time with us and sharing your skills and your knowledge. And we're hoping that maybe someday we can get this thing moving forward and really help out the people out there that really need to be identified and their families.
It doesn't work unless opportunities like this. So, Joe, I thank you so much for having me on and opportunity to speak about all this stuff. And clearly, we're kindred spirits. We share that passion for doing the right thing. And
yep, like I say, we got it in the book. The book is doing well. So we're it's starting to work. I think eventually, sometimes you better be lucky than good.
Right.
So we'll see.
Whatever works.
All right, everybody. So thanks for joining us, Joe. You hang out 1 second. Everybody, you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.